People have to choose things in moderation. And I think for some people, it definitely becomes a habit and addiction and something that they can't not have. I think for the bulk of people, it becomes something that they say, I'm not a brownie person. I'm not a chip person. I'm not a burger person, but I am a beverage person. In fact, early on in the business, we would look through our garbage can to see what were people throwing away, and everybody was throwing away Starbucks cups, or they were throwing away, boba tea cups or whatever. Like, these people, that's how they choose to treat themselves, is with beverages. The people who love it. And so I don't know, again, if that's justification or not, but I can see the concern, right? It goes through my mind too, is how much is too much? Our son just got 4 cavities at the dentist. So, we may have contributed to that too. And so there's a little bit of that in the back of my mind that goes, okay, well, what's my role in all of this?
It is time for another episode of the Cultural Hall. And what I love most about this, and Chad, my guest, Chad Taylor, he doesn't know this because I don't think he's ever listened to an episode of the Cultural Hall. But what I love about this episode is there are often times where things come up in the news, Chad, and I'll say, yep, we should definitely talk to that person in a future episode of the Cultural Hall. And that's where that sucker goes to die. But you, I made the call out, and then you got back to me, and now you are here, Chad Taylor from Sota Shop in Minnesota. Welcome to the Cultural Hall.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Now, your website would tell me that you guys are the first and only dirty pop store in the state of Minnesota. Is that, in fact, the truth, sir?
I know no other truth. I would imagine you can find a dirty soda somewhere in Minnesota, but not a dedicated shop. There's within a matter of time, I'm sure there'll be plenty of others popping up.
Now, before anyone starts to go, oh, hey, wait a minute, what does this have to do with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Well, Chad is a member, everyone, and happens to have this shop. So that's the connection. Used to be a bishop. They let you go early, or did you serve your term?
Oh, I served, I don't know what the official term is, but 5+, yeah.
Oh, geez. Now, there are so many questions that I have. I think that maybe I get to know you, and then we come back to the soda shop, because your menu is awesome, and I think that that's sort of fun. I think that the idea of being a provider of soda and a member of the church, there may be some discussion to be had there. I think that could be kind of interesting. So tell me, are you originally from Utah, born and raised in Minnesota? What's your origin story?
Yeah, you bet. Ooh, origin story. I like that. No, I was raised out in Bountiful, Utah, just north of Salt Lake there, and grew up there with my family. But we've been out of the state for pretty much since we got married.
Okay. You and your wife.
Yeah.
How'd you meet your wife?
We were at Utah State University together. So I ran into this girl who was really cute, and she talked to me, and that was all I really needed to decide that I wanted to talk to her. And I swore I would never, I wasn't going to get married in college because that wasn't a rational thing to do. And then I think, probably half a year later, I was proposing. So,
did you serve a mission?
I did.
Where'd you go?
California, Los Angeles. So just a little city on the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. Is that
never heard of it? Yeah.
LA? I'm not.
It's near there. Yeah.
Spanish,
a lot of time in broken English speaking. Most of my time in Compton, South Central.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is after your time, but I would imagine because some missionaries never completely leave their mission behind and shouldn't. But the trend of the Straight Outta Compton a few years ago, everyone doing those shirts, did all of the elders from your district buy those and want to take a picture?
I don't know. That's a good question. We never had anything like that. We just thought it was cool to be in Compton, a place that nobody else really talked about. The reality is it was just kind of a typical working class neighborhood most of the time that we were there. But, you have little moments like I attracted the street Kendrick Lamar grew up on, and, I ran into the Venus Williams family and all that kind of fun stuff. But by and large, it was just a, working class neighborhood. They burned a lot of the stuff to the ground years and years ago, as you know, and and commercial business never really came in. So with that, just single family home neighborhood just kind of just sprout up.
When was it you were serving in LA?
Right around 2000.
Okay. Turn of the millennium. Were you actually on the mission, the 99 to 2000?
No, just after that. Yeah. So we survived Y2K despite all the concerns about that, and then I headed out.
You said we made it, and now I'm leaving.
That's right.
Have you been back to Compton, to where you served some of the areas, and done the thing where you went, oh, this was it not this safe when I was there before?
Yeah, that happened. I took my wife back a few years after serving, and we went to visit one of my friend's Mama Juanita, and we realized she lived in a sketchy neighborhood, and that was not as obvious to me as a naive 19-year-old. That being said, we still felt safe where we went, but we looked different, I'm sure, in our everyday life than I did as a missionary, and so we didn't hang out forever.
Yeah. We drove by is what that was. Mama went out, get in the car, let's go. We're going somewhere safer. Any sort of like either miracles from the mission that you saw that you would be comfortable to share, or things that you're like, you will not believe that this happened?
Well, I feel like at this point in time, anybody listening would believe pretty much anything at this point. But, a couple of really cool moments, one of them more prideful in nature, the other one just kind of awe-inspiring. I'd say the prideful moment was, this was the height of tracting accomplishes nothing, right? There had been that great study that had been done, the 1 in 100 versus a media referral on tracting. Mm-hmm. And we just had more time in our day than you could possibly fill with media referrals. And I got tired of missionaries saying, don't tract, it's a waste of time, you can never get anything done. Because sometimes that's all we had time for. So in the pride of my heart, I was like, we will see somebody join this church from tracting. And so it was my last transfer out there. But sure enough, in that same transfer, we knocked the door, met someone, introduced the gospel. They'd been praying for the gospel and had never heard of the church before. They got baptized that same transfer. It was kind of a really neat experience, and just a reminder that, people are everywhere. We rule a lot of people out, and we rule a lot of ways out. But the older I get, the more I realize my, whatever kind of rules I put in place for myself don't seem to really apply if you feel the inspiration to do something. So that was cool. But again, that was probably more just for me than anything else in my own pride. The other one that was really neat is I remember I was not the most on time missionary. I talked a lot with people. I felt like it was better to give quality than kind of quantity in terms of lessons. And so we were leaving we were late going to a dinner appointment. And for whatever reason, going to that dinner appointment, I was like, we've got to stop. There's this less active that we're supposed to check out on the street that we've never been by. We've got to try it. And my companion was furious with me. We were already late. We were hungry. I was like, no, man, we have to do it. And I didn't even really know why. So we walked up, and they were moving a bunch of boxes into the house. So it wasn't even the right family. It was just another family moving boxes into the house. We offered to help move the boxes, and they said, oh yeah, okay, come on, Ella. It was a Polynesian family. And we went in, and they said, you know missionaries? And they said, yeah, we're members of the church, actually. So they had just moved in. They happened to be members of the church.
Wow.
And then his sister asked us a bunch of questions, and we discovered she was not a member of the church. And she said, will you teach me? My mom appeared to me last night in a dream and said, it's finally time you need to join my church. I'm sending the missionaries. And so that was the quickest I'd ever gone from, hi, nice to meet you, to we're in the waters of baptism. She was like, yeah, keep going. Stop asking me questions. Let's keep going. I'm in. So that was a really kind of neat experience that made me realize that, it wasn't my efforts that were making the difference as much as, there were plans oftentimes already in play. And my job was just to show up at the right time and try to fill the role that I was asked to do. So some pretty cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing. I know a lot of mission experiences can be pretty tender or close to the heart because you remember them, and I don't know. I don't feel like we get enough chance to share them as we get further and further away from the mission. So I appreciate you sharing that. So then you come home and you go to Utah State and you say, "That's a babe. Let's get married." And then you're like, you know what? Sota is in my future. Tell me, tell me how Minnesota came about, and then Like what was it at Utah State that you were like, yeah, maybe this will end up where it is, or how we got to Minnesota? Then we'll take a
Yeah. Yeah, good question. So I was a marketing grad at undergrad at Utah State. Really loved branding, marketing, all that fun stuff. So of course, my first job out of high school was in financial operations, or out of college, because I was terrified I wouldn't get a job in marketing. And so I took a job. It led me down to Texas. Eventually, I said, you know what? No, I do want to get back to marketing, and that led me to grad school up in Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon. And coming out of there, Target recruited me, and I spent a good part of a decade working in merchandising for Target. That got me a lot closer to the marketing that I had always wanted to touch. And just like most people, at a certain point in time in life, you start to say, like, even though my job's awesome, my team's awesome, my company's awesome, I need something more for me to grow. And so I left Target probably in what would have been the prime of my career, and went off to do some other things. And one of those things ended up being Sota, but that was certainly not the plan all along. It was more of kind of a pursuit of what are some of the things that could be really fulfilling to learn and grow from.
Do you feel like it was God called, like, hey, Chad, I need you to do some other things? Or do you think it was like finally a manifestation of your fear and then overcoming the fear to be like, listen, I feared, that's why I went financial before, and then I've been doing this, and I've been doing the thing for the man, but now I got to live true and authentic to myself, kind of being that way and then branching out. What was the journey?
Yeah, certainly not God-led. I do believe, our Father in heaven favors his children. He's maybe not be a play favorites, but there is favor there. And I think he's concerned with what we're concerned with, as long as, within a righteous vein. And I think he's always created me to be just a creator and intellectually curious and full of a desire to make people smile. And, I'd like to believe that when I reached a point in my career that I wasn't feeling that anymore, he surrounded me with people and thoughts and ideas that said, hey, why don't you get out there and do something that'll do it? Not because the world needed more diabetes or sugar or anything like that, but because I needed to get out and create. And that's, luckily, the previous job had afforded me the ability to do that with less fear. To your point, you spend a lot of time, especially if you're a provider, you spend a lot of time worried about what if I can't provide next week and the week after that. And I was lucky enough to have a period of time where I was not concerned about that, and could go chase a few different things down. And that kind of became the opportunity for me to learn and grow. In fact, I went and worked for a retailer that's now defunct. I knew they were probably on the verge of bankruptcy, but I kind of was like, that might be cool. Like, I might learn a lot from watching that. And there's some other things that I did in the middle there that helped me learn and grow and realize that there's tremendous value in growth. And it doesn't always have to be at the risk of income. It doesn't always have to be at the risk of safety. So, yeah.
It's a common conversation that we'll have here in the Cultural Hall where we'll talk about, it seems to be centered more around the arts than maybe like marketing or something like that. But that we as people, but certainly as members of the church, we go, husband, this is generalized and stereotypical, I recognize. So everyone about to yell, know that I'm speaking in a very general way, but whomever is going to be the provider, we can say it that way, but typically within our faith tradition would be the gentleman, whatever. We look at what God has given us as our skills and ability, and then we try and match that with how I will possibly ever be able to provide. And so many people are the marketing guy who goes to finance, the guitar wizard who goes to, a car dealership. Like we do these things because we feel like we need to. Being able to speak to maybe not necessarily yourself at the age of coming out of college, but doing that, what would you say to the person that's like, I am built for something else that is different than the thing that I am doing? Help them get from where they are to where they would be.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really a huge conversation to unpack. But I think, briefly, my thoughts would be, when we're younger, I think we're significantly more portable than we realize we are. So I think that's one. I think we can go places we don't realize we can. We say, well, I got 2 more months left on my lease. Yeah. I think we'd be amazed with, how cheap that lease really is. I think the other thing is, I think regardless of kind of what the skill or ability or passion or talent that somebody has, regardless of what that thing may be labeled, right? We might say, oh, an artist can't make money, right? Well, the beautiful images of the drinks I have on my website were shot by Mike Kemp, who's a professional photographer. He's a food photographer. He makes good money, right? He was a mission companion of mine. And or people will say, well, I can't make money in music. And yet I've got a nephew who is, 18, 19 years old. He just signed with Sony, I think. And he's making money, but he's not on the front at the microphone, right? He's figured out how to make it as a producer, making beats. And I think there's legitimate paths to providing regardless of what it is you go after. But I would say to that young version of me or whoever else is, whatever path you get on, you can't expect, to get to call all the shots, right? You don't get to go be the professional tomorrow in the thing that you're most passionate about without learning the ropes, right? And that's something that I've had a lot of good friends across the years that have struggled with is they say, well, I want to be in charge now. Or I want to be able to I want 100% of my time to be the thing that I enjoy the most, right? And life isn't made to serve us like we are, that we might have joy, and we're not meant to suppress our talents and abilities in favor of just providing. But at the same point in time, there are some rules to the games, right? Like, and if the way you provide with the thing that you're passionate about involves nights, well, you might have to work nights, right? and so I do think there's some rules and requirements on the things that we need to chase to provide. But I do worry about the idea that some people are like, I can't ever do the thing that I enjoy because that's not a common path to success. There's so many paths to success, and the way that we measure success is varied. But I've known a lot of great people who have stuck to their guns and have provided just fine for their family, by playing the rules of the game that they've decided to play.
Yeah. It's interesting. It strikes me as you were saying, we might have joy. Joy and fun feel like two different things to me. And there's something that is rewarding about joy. Joy through, joy comes at the end of a struggle mixed with things that I'm good at and everything like that. Whereas fun is like, yeah, that ride was fun. I did that fun thing. And there doesn't seem to be that struggle with it. Let's take a break. When we come back in the second block, we're going to take a big old swig of 44 ounces of Sota. That's where we're headed with this. Coming back in the second block of the Cultural Hall. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, you know what? I could do a podcast. You should. Having a podcast has been one of the things that a lot of people have really sought out to do. Some just to see, can I even do this thing? I'm here to tell you that you can. And I have consulted lots of people to be able to do it. Now, some people, I consult them and they go, oh, this was way more than I ever thought it would be. And other people go, oh, you know what? A podcast isn't for me, but you helped me decide to do this thing. Whatever it is, maybe it will end up being a podcast, or maybe it'll just end up being that we have some great times together. You realize that it's time to do that in a different season of your life, or the season is now. You can reach out to me, contact@theculturalhall.com, and say podcast consultant, or my email address, Richie, RICHIET, Stedman @gmail.com, and be sure that you put podcast consultant in the subject line. Would love to talk to you and see if having a podcast would be the right thing for you. Here in the second block of the Cultural Hall, remember that there is a secret but not sacred Facebook group where if you are a Patreon saint, you can join it. Now, there are 3 different levels. It will not surprise you to know that there is the telestial, the terrestrial, and the celestial level of being a Patreon saint, and we would encourage you to put your money where your ears are. It's patreon.com/The Cultural Hall. You get in on that, we add you to the group, and then you can hang out and have tangential conversations about Target, or about becoming a true Aggie at Utah State, or anything else that might be brought up in this episode or other episodes. People will oftentimes just start those conversations there. It's patreon.com/The Cultural Hall. Put your money where your ears are, Chad. So there's a lot in between, and for me to jump from one to the other is sort of crude in its way, but you decide that a soda shop somewhere along the way is what you're going to do. So I would love to know how this came about.
Yeah, you bet. So like we mentioned earlier, my wife and I grew up out in Utah, and so we have lots of cousins for our kids to play with and things like that. So we're out there at least once a year, making good on our commitment at the black sheep who moved away. And as we do so, right, we see as more time goes on, these soda shops start popping up everywhere. And what was amazing to me about it is rain or shine or pandemic or not or recession or whatever it was, people were lining up and they were happy to get there. They were happy to wait in line. They were even happier to walk away. And I worked in food service growing up, and I know a happy customer in food service is a rare thing. And so, I kept looking at that over the last 10 years and saying, man, gosh, somebody's going to do that here in Minnesota, right? Like, we like our treats as much as anybody else. And so somebody's going to do that. And that kind of comment just kind of came and went. And I would imagine across, even listening, I would imagine there's, 100 people who have thought about opening a soda shop at this point in time. And that's kind of where I was at. I was like, maybe I will, maybe I won't, I don't know. But as I kind of left Target to seek some more fulfillment, one of the things that my wife helped point out to me is she's like, Target didn't need you to create a brand. They didn't need you to do deep marketing, right? They'd already established themselves. But you've always wanted to do something like that. Maybe you do the soda shop, and maybe you make that where you get the chance to influence the culture and the brand and the vibe. And yes, soda shops already exist, so it's not a true innovation, but maybe the innovation for you gets to be the part that you're most passionate about. And so that was a really awesome spouse who kind of, seeded that idea. At the time I was flying back and forth to New Jersey every week for the job I was working at this other retailer. And so on the planes, I would just draft kind of the business plan and the things, start to do finances, try to figure out, can we really afford to do this? And the answer was, not if it doesn't make a money right away. And my assumption would be that it wouldn't. And so I kind of started a couple businesses at the same time, and Sota was one of those. And so that's kind of where it started. It's really only about, I'd say, just over a year old in terms of the public knowing about it. But it's probably more like 2+ years in kind of creation. And so when I went out to go look at leases and things like that, really interesting. Nobody out here even knew what the heck a dirty pop was. And so had a hard time signing leases and things like that. So strangely, we ended up building out a food truck. And that was actually how we started. We dipped our toe in the water, and I said, you know what? I can build a food truck. We can start it. If people love it, we'll see what we're going to do about that. But by and large, I think in the back of my mind, this was like a little side gig that we would do in the summer, and that's it. Right. That's kind of as far as my brain went with that.
Yeah. Common path to a brick and mortar is doing the food truck to build brand awareness and then buy into the brick and mortar. And then a lot of people maybe don't know this, but there are a lot of businesses around like the Great Lakes area that would do, hey, we're in business right now, and now it's cold, and we're only April to October. That's more common. You don't see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're
That's
right.
nearly as much, but in the Midwest, it is. Yep, join us May 1st until October 1st, and then we don't do this anymore. What do you do? We don't do this. So to be able to do that, but you do have the very difficult thing of it's a dirty soda, and you don't know what it is, and Mormon urban myth, legend, or whatever would tell me that the reason why it's so successful in what people lovingly call the Jello Belt is because we don't have alcohol to lean to, but that we're having our substitution of soda. But people in Minnesota have alcohol, and it's not a predominant faith tradition to not drink alcohol. So those would be a couple things that I would go, well, wait a minute, is this going to work?
Yeah, and you wouldn't be alone. I mean, I heard a lot of that in the beginning, and every entrepreneur is different. I was less in the world of like, I will die on the sword for the fact that this is going to work here, right? That's not where I was as much as I was like, let's see if this will work here. At the end of the day, when I look at dirty soda, I see it not as a substitute for coffee or substitute for alcohol, despite that might be the case for a few people. I just think as humans, we love to be treated, right? There's an emotional connection that a psychological moment that happens when we treat ourselves. And this is a very cheap way to treat yourself. And then you add that to the chemical reaction of sugar hitting your brain, and you go, wow, I rewarded myself, and then I rewarded myself. And so in my mind, I thought, once people get this, it's going to be fine. Now, Minnesota, to your point, one of the top 10 states in the nation per capita on alcohol consumption. Also coffee as well. We've got Starbucks here that kills it, but also Caribou Coffee's from here, and that's phenomenal business that continues to expand. So people here were well served on their coffee and everything else. At the same point in time, huge, immigrant population of Hmong culture here, and so boba tea, as big as it is everywhere else, it's, I feel like, twice as big here. And so lots of reasons that this could have not succeeded, because everybody has other options. And that was part of the point of the food truck as well, as we tested out. And however well it does, that will determine what we do next. What we weren't ready for is what happened next. And yeah, so I mean, I don't want to probably miss the part in the middle, just for any entrepreneur out there who's hearing only the good parts. There were hours of nobody showing up to the track, right? Hours and hours for months and months. But what was amazing is whoever tried it loved it, and they came back. I mean, our return rate was well over 70%. You started to see the same faces. And then they would tell people about it. And so I spent a lot in the beginning on branding and marketing, but I spent very little on getting the word out about the truck. Part of it was because it's really hard to run a water-based food truck. It's significantly more complicated than something, water's not meant to be portable, neither is carbonation. So I was like, I don't want too many people to show up. I can barely handle, fixing the stuff every day. So, but as time went on and the interest in dirty soda across the nation went on, and Swig continued to build their social media presence, and I continued to build my social media presence, and then there just kind of came a moment all of a sudden where the light went on and everybody said, oh my gosh, we have this in Minnesota, guys. Mm-hmm. And almost over a weekend, there was a viral amount of TikToks that went out. And the next day we showed up and there were 30 people standing at the food truck, and the line never slowed down for the rest of the season.
Jeez. And that's not that TikTok trend when you're talking about. This was pre The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. It seemed like there was it's a dirty Dr. Pepper. This is how you make it. And everyone did those TikTok videos. Yeah, that's the phenomenon that you're talking about. But
and there was kind of a 1-2 punch. Yeah. The Secret Lives documentary, it just 10 times the number of people who were already looking at this trend and then found out we had it in Minnesota.
Do you get
so it went from big to bigger?
Do you get a lot of people who will come up and say, oh, we wanted to try this because of the TikTok trend? Like, you're able to know that that's what it's from, or because we saw this on Secret Lives?
In the beginning, yeah, for sure. They would tell us they were so excited to be there. A lot of them would drive 2-4 hours to get there, to wait in this line to try something that they didn't have access to anywhere else. Now, to any potential competitors out there in Minnesota, I've got them all. We're good. Don't worry about it. But but they would, and then they tell you their story, right? Like, I came here because of this. I saw this online. And in fact, sometimes they'd be like, can you make this? Right? And they'd show you something from online. Can you make this? Or so-and-so on Secret Lives, they like this, and this in their drink. Can you do that? So we'd get a fair amount of that. As time's gone on, we see less of that, less of what I call food tourism. Mm-hmm. And a lot more of regulars, right? Who are like, gosh, this is my thing. This is how I treat myself. And so we get a lot less of that, and more people just ordering straight off the menu who come because this is their place.
Because it comes to mind, do you have a secret menu that people can order from? Or like if they're regulars that,
Yeah. We do weekly flavors. And so, this is a page out of actually another Utah-based company's book, but we really loved how Crumble would always have something new each week for you to try. And I loved that idea. And so we do a weekly flavor drop. We come up with something new, unique, every week. And then as time goes on, people come back and they keep asking for it. And so we try to keep those recipes on hand for inevitably when somebody asks for something. To your point, inevitably, if somebody asks for it, about 3 more people in the line will ask for it because they don't see it on the menu and they get excited that they're ordering something secret. So there is something to that people really enjoy about that idea of the secret menu.
Naysayers of this would be like, Chad, all you did was take an idea, rip it off, and put it in Minnesota.
Yeah, it would.
But I mean, I'm a wedding DJ, and tell you what, even if I did my business the exact way another person did that, that is not as easy as that is. I am not that other person. I have different strengths and struggles and different clientele and all of that stuff. But speak to that, because people are like, you didn't invent anything, Chad. You just took swig from Utah and called it soda in Minnesota, which is clever as heck, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that was really obvious to me in the beginning, and this happens to every industry, right? And at Target, right, I would help launch a brand, but very soon thereafter, we'd be looking for another version of that same thing because people want more access. And so, to me, it was less about, I wanted to be careful. I didn't go look at their menus before I built my menu, things like that you want to make it as much yours as you can, while I will always give respect to the dirty soda shops out west who started this trend. They put in a lot of hard work to build the excitement for this. But at a certain point in time in any industry, right, everything eventually starts to become fair use. And so to that regard, grateful for what they've done and grateful to provide other versions of the same thing here. What has been fun, though, in terms of kind of what's unique, what's created here, has really been the branding and the marketing, the menu selection, little things that we probably do a little different just because we think they work better for us in terms of pricing and things like that. But by and large, our ultimate goal is the same, I think, as theirs, which is just to help make people happy, right? This is something that people wanted and loved, and they needed it here, and it was unserved, and so we really benefit by putting in the work. To your point, as a DJ or any entrepreneur, like it's work. It's so much work, right? And figuring out, okay, well, how on earth do you manage the fact that water and air don't want to hang out together and be carbonated, and they certainly don't want to do it on a food truck, and they certainly don't want to do it after a certain temperature, and they certainly don't, you know what I mean? All these little things, and how do you handle the things constantly breaking down, and what do you do with that? And so my hat's off to everybody who goes out there. Even, I spend a lot of time, like I said, in New Jersey, and every falafel shop is exactly the same as the falafel shop next door, but those guys are dripping sweat and working hard. You know what I mean? And so my hat goes off to everybody who gets out there and actually puts in the work to create something that may not be innovative, but certainly had to be created all over again in order for it to be theirs.
Yeah. Let's take another break. Come back in the third block. I want to go through a specific couple of the things on the menu because I think they're, again, just like the name of the shop, is sort of brilliant and worth noting. Also, I want to talk about time as a bishop and then doing all this. And then, I don't know, maybe some of the ramifications of being a soda supplier. You're an addict pusher. I don't know. We'll get into some of that stuff. Coming back in the third block. Let me take just a moment to tell you all about bestdjinutah.com. That is the website where you can learn all about me. Oh, sure, you probably feel like you know me, but you know me in the cultural hall sense. I have a DJ company, now 6 of us strong, great event hosts, MCs, and DJs that can be able to make whatever event you have coming up absolutely spectacular, and hope you will reach out to us. Now you're thinking, well, wait a minute, Richie, I don't live in Utah. Would you travel? Absolutely, I would travel. Would they travel? Absolutely, they would travel. Whatever your event is, doesn't have to be a wedding or a community event. We can do all sorts of things. I can teach you line dancing. I can dance with you. We can do partner dancing. We can do all kinds of things, but we can't do any of it if you don't hit me up. You can go to bestdjinutah.com. You can fill out the form to get more information or get a quote, and then I will get right back to you. Find out why I'm so busy and why sometimes we don't get episodes of the Cultural Hall. It's all because of bestdjinutah.com. Here in the third block of the Cultural Hall, remember that if you would like to be a part of the Cultural Hall, whether you think you might be a good guest, you know someone who might be a good guest, or you have a particular skill which you would like to share and not be paid for, that is the kind of thing that we would love if you would want to reach out to us. Contact at theculturalhall.com. Hey, this would be a great guest, or you know what? I'm really good at branding, say, maybe would be an example. And maybe the Cultural Hall brand could be suited and helped by some branding lessons. Maybe that's just a for instance sort of thing. That's not pointed at anything you necessarily, Chad, although if you wanted to. No, I'm teasing. Contact theculturalhall.com, though, if you'd like to help out anyone, anything, We don't always take you up on what it is because sometimes it just doesn't fit, but we would love to know what you would be able to help out with or be interested in hearing on the show. Contact at theculturalhall.com. So I think actually the way that this came about, there was some sort of news about your flavors, or maybe it was, I can't remember. I've got a news feeder that essentially just sends me different things. I don't know that we even knew that it was owned by a member of the church. We just got this. And then we went to the menu, and I've got to give you proper just love and adoration for the menu. So they're all based on songs.
That's right. Yep.
And songs for people of a different, not a different, but of a certain generation. Because you've got like the Stacy's Mom, and you've got Two Pina Coladas and Regulator mound up, Basket Case, Green Day, obviously, but there's a couple on here that maybe, and this is embarrassing for me to know or to admit, but Streets. What is Streets? What song is Streets?
Yeah, so that one's a bit of a stretch. Most of these are 90s songs or late 80s songs. Okay. That it's really hard to write Where the Streets Have No Name on a menu. It's just a really long title. It's my favorite. I've often said, I don't want a fancy funeral. I just want everybody to sit in the dark, eat pizza, and listen to Where the Streets Have No Name. So that's where that one comes from. That was the first drink we came up with. But yeah, all kind of 90s songs. We knew, Gen X moms, they remember the 90s. And really cool Gen Z, our teens who packed the shop, they still think the 90s are cool. I don't know why, but they're like, man, the 90s were a vibe, and they are loving it. And so they love the songs too.
You pay tribute to I Wish, which was the first CD that I ever owned.
Oh, wow.
Yep, Ski Low, bottom it. The media play. Speaking of defunct stores that no longer exist.
Yeah.
California Love, Everything Zen, come on, a little Bush there. Wicked Game, Chris Isaacs. It's just cool. Now, I want to talk to you about this. One of the things that we talk a lot about in the Cultural Hall is about like letter and spirit of law. And the thing that I always like to say jokingly, but pointedly jokingly, is I say, oh yeah, the woman in your ward who is like, I just don't understand how someone can be so dependent on alcohol as she has her swig, or for the purposes of this conversation, her 64-ounce soda and her pink frosted cookie, and is like, they just need to live healthier.
Yeah.
Was that a consideration? I mean, obviously you're not responsible for people's choices. People have agency and all of that, but was it a consideration to go, should I be doing this, and or am I causing harm by having this out, by creating this, by making this something that people not only purchase, but want to come back and purchase again and again?
Yeah, no, great question. One that I, assumed I'd get asked somewhere along the way. I think for me, I could be, who knows, but to me, I think it's really obvious what we sell, right? Like we sell a treat, and it's a treat, and everybody has different levels of how many treats they allow themselves in their life for whatever reason, right? We're a huge cookie family. In fact, my wife's downstairs hosting Warm Cookie Wednesday right now for all the high schoolers and middle schoolers, and that's a treat too. And that's a lot to put into your body. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't know if this is justification or what it is, but I just kind of say it's obviously a treat shop. You're obviously walking away with a sugary drink. Maybe we should put a please drink responsibility caveat at the bottom of the door or something like that. But to me, I think that's it. It's just, people have to choose things in moderation. And I think for some people, it definitely becomes a habit and addiction and something that they can't not have. I think for the bulk of people, it becomes something that they say, I'm not a brownie person. I'm not a chip person. I'm not a burger person, but I am a beverage person. In fact, early on in the business, we would look through our garbage can to see what were people throwing away. And everybody was throwing away Starbucks cups, or they were throwing away, boba tea cups or whatever. Like these people, that's how they choose to treat themselves, is with beverages. The people who love it. And so I don't know, again, if that's justification or not, but I can see the concern, right? It goes through my mind too, is how much is too much? Our son just got 4 cavities at the dentist. So, we may have contributed to that too. And so there's a little bit of that in the back of my mind that goes, okay, well, what's my role in all of this? I'm sure somebody selling cigarettes said the same thing once upon a time too, but ultimately, I guess that's our goal. It's just to make people happy with something that's a special thing in an otherwise could have been a difficult day or a really celebratory day.
Yeah, I have long joked that with places like Sota and other things, I want to have a little pop-up store next to it called Blood Sugar, where I'm just dealing in insulin.
Green insulin.
So if people, they want to be able to drink more soda, but they just probably shouldn't, they can drop on over to Blood Sugar, and it just becomes almost like the KFC and the A&W have the mixed stores together.
Right.
I don't need a whole store. I just need a place to have a couple of syringes and some vials so people can come to the Blood Sugar. When you were just recently released from being a bishop, this is just a curiosity to me. Oftentimes I think we don't do this so much, it seems, with like bishops that are lawyers or bishops that are some of these like CEO kind of things, because I think we sort of place these CEOs in a thing that we're like, yeah, you're in charge, but I don't know really what I would benefit from you. But when we have like doctors that are bishops or entrepreneurs of any kind, like it sort of gets assumed that then, well, the bishop will be there, so we're going to have soda from Sota, and we'll... Did you find that? Did you put an end to that real quick? Were you more than willing to do that? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, good question. I've been met with just a ton of respect from everybody for the fact that that's ours, right? And I think everybody understands, that's a little bit of our livelihood, and we're not a big corporation, and so by and large, we haven't had a lot of that. I did, at one point in time, bring the truck by for a big steak event. Just my treat, right? Fully just on my own, something that I wanted to do. And I happened to have the resources to be able to do that. And so we did. And, but it's not something we could do often. Other than that, we've really never been asked, to use it or to have access to it. And if we were, we'd probably say, no, I think I'd like to keep, church and state more or less kind of separate on this one. But otherwise it's been fine. Now, in terms of employment, it's a different story, right? Like a huge portion of our work, our team that works for us are members of the church. And I've gone back and forth on that one a lot too. Like how much do I want that to be? How close is too close? If I make you really mad at work, how does that impact the way that you feel about me at church? But ultimately, I kind of, have decided, that why wouldn't I pull employees from the place that I know them best, right? Sure. It makes the job interviews a whole lot different. And so then even when I was bishop, sometimes people would be over at my house and they'd say, "Hey, bishop," and I'd say, "Nope, Chad. I'm Chad right now. Like you're talking to Chad. If you want to talk to the bishop, let me know. I'll get in that frame of mind. But right now, you're talking to Chad." But I think the similar kind of thing at work, right? Like if at work anybody would ever call me bishop when that was the case, I would have been like, "Oh, hang on." So we're like, I'm the same person, but I have different roles, and right now my role is boss, or whatever that might be.
I like the fact that you have the people that you worship with working for you, because then you can be like, I went ahead and I auto deducted tithing, so you're welcome. I'll just go ahead and we'll just line item that over to the church. No, it's fine. It's just the benefit of working here. We'll go ahead. Right. How did you like being a bishop?
Boy, that might be more of a bigger unload question than the other from earlier in the episode. It was. I mean, I don't ever want these phrases to be trite. Having lived through them, they aren't trite, but they sound trite, right? It was life-changing, and it was rewarding, and it was awful, and it was inspiring, and it was exhausting, and I don't have any hair anymore, and that's not a joke. I lost it during this tenure, but it opened my eyes to a lot of things. My wife jokes that the phrase I use a lot of times is I like people less than I used to, but I love them a whole lot more. And if that makes any sense, because there are these abrasive moments, whether you like them or not, and you're a resource by and large in most people's eyes. You're a resource to be used. Not that anybody on their own is trying to use you to disposal, but but collectively, right, in aggregate, sometimes you feel like you're being used beyond your capacity and your abilities. And so that creates the kind of liking people a little bit less, but the being in these moments with people, the love, I can't, I got a perspective on humans. I really like, I loved humans, but I just got a whole lot more, than I put in that particular element.
Probably a unique depth of love because of serving them so tirelessly for so long, right? That seems to me where like that intensity of love comes from. Like, oh man, I don't like you at all. Like I know plenty of people who I love so very deeply, and I don't like them at all. But I have just a tremendous amount of love. I love that. That's beautifully said. Is there anything that within this or within you, if we never speak again, is there anything that I need to know about Chad Taylor, the owner of Sota?
Gosh, I don't think so. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Okay. I wish that I was anywhere near Minnesota because Warm Cookie Wednesday sounds incredible. Why? Yeah, maybe I'll have to start doing that.
Significantly better than Sota. Yeah, my wife started that. We don't have the most social kids. We have 4 kids, and as they started to grow through middle school, we started realizing, gosh, they are never going to bring anybody home. Like that's just never going to happen. Mm-hmm. Some would argue society's changed that way, anyways. But we wanted people here. We both remember clearly President Hinckley's invitation in the year 2000, where he said, "Open your homes, open your fridge, close your eyes, let them eat." And so my wife had the idea, let's do Warm Cookie Wednesday, and started making a couple dozen cookies, and little by little their friends would trickle in. The pandemic became a much bigger deal, right? Once it was safe to get together again. Then she was making a couple hundred cookies every week, and she rotates through flavors and just comes up with these crazy fun cookies. And it's just a party downstairs for a couple hours that I try to avoid. And then I go down and I see if there's any leftovers.
I love that. That's beautifully said. The other question that I would have is, you're the only one in Minnesota, and it sounds like it's just one store. If you don't expand, you're going to lose market share, my friend. It's going to be done. You'll look up.
When they're banned. Yeah. Yep. We have a lease that's just about signed for a second, and then we have a letter of intent out on a 3rd location right now. I get 2 or 3 people a week reaching out wanting to franchise, and I have a whole other job that I'm just actually wrapping up this week, and so Sota becomes, to the earlier point, I thought this was a side gig. Now it's going to be my full-time thing every day. So we're kind of going full speed ahead with opening some more stores.
Last question I would ask before I ask you the 3 questions we ask everyone who steps in the cultural hall. Do you guys do swag, stickers or shirts or stuff that people can purchase?
We most certainly will. I literally haven't had time for it. We're like, let's just make drinks. And when I get out of this other job, that's been actually another interesting job. But as soon as that one wraps up, then I have a lot more time to make sure we actually have really cool stuff that we're proud of.
Yeah, kind of a fun other exploration in branding. You strike me as a person kind of like me, where it's like, I don't know that I need to do this other thing, but I kind of like the idea of seeing if I can do this thing. So that's kind of fun. There are 3 questions we ask everyone who steps into the cultural hall. Let me ask you those questions now. First question is do you have a calling? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, so I'm the Stake Young Men's president right now.
Geez, Bishop to Stake Young Men's president? Give you a ministering calling or something for a lot.
It feels like a significant break right now. But it's great. I get to stay involved with the youth. For whatever reason, everybody's given certain gifts and abilities and talents. This allows me to continue to use ones that I feel uniquely blessed with, and to be able to be with the group that I like to spend the most time with.
If you could pick a calling for yourself, either one that exists or make one up, what would you pick?
A ward caterer, for sure. I would create that, and it would be for everything, right? You guys need cookies for your activity on Wednesday? Give me a call. We need a ward activity? Give me a call. I would love to be the ward caterer. I love cooking for really large groups.
Now, are you talking savory stuff too? Because my next question with that will be, all right, it's the annual whatever thing that we've done the same thing year over year. What are we having for dinner? Go.
Yeah, what are we going to have for dinner? I guess it kind of depends on what everybody wants. I like doing different stuff, introducing people to different cuisine, which may not be everybody's favorite, but it's always easy to do spaghetti, but I'd much rather do like tikka masala and a bunch of homemade naan and
Oh, yeah.
Desserts for days.
Man, come back to Utah. I need you in my ward. I need warm cookie Wednesdays, and I need a chicken tikka masala for our dinner instead of, as you said, spaghetti. The last question we ask everyone who steps into the culture hall, we ask you to answer it however you may, interpret it however you would like. But here is the question: what is your favorite part of your faith?
Oh man, I think the fact that I have people all around me who share my beliefs, but ultimately I am intended to develop a deeply personal relationship with my God. And I don't know that I believed that when I was being raised, but as time has gone on, I discovered that that's kind of the goal, right? Is to develop your own relationship with God while being surrounded by people who are doing the same thing. It should be common. It's really not common in the world. I'm not even convinced how common it is in the church sometimes. But the idea that I get to develop a personal relationship with deity is phenomenal. And the fact that everybody's on a different stage of that, and yet somehow we're all here for each other through that process is, it's really cool. I'm sure it sounds crazy to some people, but it's very real to me.
Yeah, I like the way you said it, that it's individual but also collective. And then the joke I was going to make, I didn't want to interrupt you, was I'm sure as soon as the bishop tells me how to have my personal relationship with God, that I'll go ahead and figure out what that is, right? That seems to be the attitude. Or as soon as the prophet tells me how to do that, we oftentimes don't take that into our own hands and go, what would that mean? How would that look like? What do I want that to be? And that's not LDS people per se more than other folks. But it is
behavior, right?
Yep. Well, Chad, I've enjoyed our time. I'm grateful that you said yes. I hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body, that if you are not healthy enough to listen this week, that you will be healthy enough to listen next week, and that when the time comes, you will be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, Chris at Alpine Lakes Travel, Debbie Wanless, Chocolate Cake Bites Podcast, and the Tiger, with a U, will be saving a seat for you on the back row of the Cultural Hall.
Save me a seat, it's sure to be neat on the back row. We really gotta go on the Cultural Hall show.